The law office carried the scent of polished wood and quiet authority, mahogany walls, leather chairs that swallowed you whole. Everything about it whispered wealth, legacy, and judgment. I sat in the corner, silent, pretending not to notice the glances exchanged between the firm's partners, the smirks, the subtle amusement. But I noticed. I always noticed. Kalen stood near the window, perfectly dressed as always, his suit sharp, his posture confident, that same smug expression he had worn since we were teenagers. He looked like he belonged there, like everything in that room already belonged to him. In truth, it probably did. The company, the estate, the legacy, all of it. And me? I was an afterthought. Garrick Miles cleared his throat, his voice precise, controlled. "Thank you for attending. We are here to proceed with the reading of the last will and testament of Thorne Vexley." His eyes didn't meet mine. No one's did. I looked down at my hands, hearing echoes of my father's voice in my mind, always focused on numbers, on profit, on value, and my mother's voice, softer, quieter, always overshadowed. I had never measured up, not to him, not to Kalen. The words blurred together until my name broke through the noise. "To Veril Vexley," he paused, shifting slightly, "our daughter, we leave the antique shaker bed currently stored in the attic." Silence followed. Just a bed. A forgotten piece of furniture, abandoned in a place I no longer belonged. I blinked, certain I had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" Garrick cleared his throat again. "The bed. Your mother had mentioned it held personal significance." Kalen let out a low, amused laugh. "Well, I guess it suits you. Sleeping alone forever." The room filled with soft laughter, polite but cruel. Garrick looked at me briefly, then away, clearly uncomfortable. But he said nothing. Neither did I. Not yet. Afterward, Kalen caught me in the hallway. "Don't take it personally, sis," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder like we were still pretending to be family. "Dad always said you had an eye for antiques. Thought you'd enjoy something like that." I stepped away from him. "Don't touch me." He raised his hand slightly, mock innocence written all over his face. "Relax. You're still technically part of the family. Maybe we'll find you a position at the foundation, something simple, reception, archives, less pressure." I didn't respond. I walked away before the anger could spill over. By the time night settled in, I was back in my apartment. 3rd floor, small, simple. Mine. The bed had already been delivered. It stood in the center of the room, wrapped in thick moving blankets, looking older than I remembered. Heavy wood, detailed carvings, worn edges, and cracked joints. It looked like something forgotten, something discarded. I stood there, staring at it for a long time. Then I noticed something. The marks weren't just damage, they were intentional. Patterns carved beneath the headboard, shapes that didn't belong to random wear and tear. I crouched down, tracing one of the grooves with my fingers. A sudden knock against the window made my entire body tense. I turned slowly, heart pounding. Across the street, a black SUV sat idling, engine low and steady. I couldn't see who was inside, but the timing was too precise to ignore. I moved to the window and pulled the blinds shut. My phone buzzed seconds later. Unknown number. "You don't know what you're sleeping on. Walk away." My stomach tightened. I called back, straight to voicemail. I checked my messages again. Nothing from Kalen, but I didn't need confirmation. This felt like him. Another reminder to stay in line. Another attempt to control the narrative. Another message came in, this time from my neighbor. "Someone tried your door earlier. Be careful." I checked every lock. Deadbolt, chain, slide. Then I pulled the blankets off the bed and knelt down again, inspecting every inch of it. One of the supports stood out immediately. Different wood, poorly replaced, out of place. I sat back, staring at it. This wasn't random. This wasn't sentimental. It was intentional. My mother never did anything without purpose, and my father never kept anything unless it was valuable or dangerous. That night, I didn't move the bed. I left it exactly where it was. I lay on the couch, staring at it through the darkness. Every sound in the hallway made my pulse spike. Every shadow felt alive. They thought they could humiliate me into silence. Instead, they handed me something they were afraid of. I didn't sleep. The words from the message kept echoing in my mind. You don't know what you're sleeping on. Walk away. Walk away from what? I wasn't someone who panicked easily. My work required patience, precision, attention to the smallest detail. And right now, everything about that bed felt wrong. Not accidental, not meaningless, deliberate. Kalen, it had to be him. But this felt deeper than one of his usual games. This felt calculated, like he knew there was something there, like he expected me to either find it or miss it completely. I wasn't going to miss it. I turned on the lamp, the soft yellow light spreading across the room. My tools were in the closet, fine instruments, picks, blades, brushes. I grabbed the smallest one and returned to the bed. Slowly, carefully, I ran my fingers along the frame again, and then I saw something. A nearly invisible seam near the base of the headboard. Too clean, too precise. I pressed against it. Nothing. I slid the blade into the edge and applied gentle pressure. A soft click broke the silence. I froze for a second, breath caught between tension and anticipation. Then the panel shifted, opening just enough to reveal a hidden compartment. Small, narrow, just enough space for something important. Inside, a tightly wrapped bundle rested in parchment. I reached in and pulled it out, my pulse quickening. Carefully, I unwrapped it. Inside were folded sheets. At first glance, they looked like blueprints, but the lines weren't purely mechanical. They curved, intertwined, patterns layered within patterns. It wasn't just design, it was code. One loose sheet slipped free. In the corner, 3 initials were written. E.V. Vexley. My mother. My throat tightened. Everything else faded for a moment. The will, Kalen, the threats. None of it mattered. I was holding something she had left behind, something meant for me. I spread the pages across the floor, smoothing them carefully. There were multiple layers, mechanical designs mixed with symbols I recognized faintly from my studies, hidden geometry, optical distortions, a language disguised as art. She hadn't just collected antiques, she had hidden something inside one. They thought it was worthless, I whispered. They never looked closely. She had hidden it where only someone paying attention would find it, not Kalen, not my father, me. I kept studying the pages, one labeled Sequence 1, another marked Anchor Points, but without context it was incomplete. I needed time, focus. My phone buzzed again. Kalen. Let it go, Veril. You don't understand what you're doing. I stared at the message. Then I typed, nothing. I set the phone aside. They didn't expect me to find this. Or maybe they did. Maybe they just didn't think I would understand it. But something about my mother, the way she used to watch me in those final months, was starting to make sense. She had been trying to tell me something, trying to leave something behind, and I hadn't seen it, not until now. I picked up the largest sheet again. Tilting it toward the light, I noticed a faint line of handwriting in the corner. Only she will understand. I stared at it, my chest tightening. She had been speaking to me all along, and now, finally, I was listening. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but instead I just sat there on the floor, the pages spread around me, emotions stacking on top of each other. Grief, regret, awe. Those words weren't just a message, they were a doorway. I carefully folded the papers and placed them in a folder before heading into the kitchen. My hands trembled slightly as I filled the kettle. I needed someone who had known her, someone who hadn't played along with the lies. I picked up my phone and called Hestia. She answered quickly. I need to see you, I said softly. Please. She didn't ask questions, just told me to come. By the time I arrived, the sky was just beginning to lighten. Her porch light was already on. She stood waiting, wrapped in a shawl, her expression soft but knowing. It's happening, isn't it? she said as I stepped inside. I nodded. Words felt too heavy. She guided me to a chair, placing her hands over mine the way she used to when I was younger. Then she walked to a cabinet and brought out a small wooden box. She gave this to me before she died, she said quietly. Told me not to open it. Said it was for you, when you were ready. I opened it. Inside was a recorder. I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room. Soft, tired, real. Veryl, if you're hearing this, it means you found what I couldn't protect. I covered my mouth, trying to hold myself together. She kept speaking. I tried to protect you. I tried to set something aside for you, but your father found out. He called me unstable, said I was filling your head with lies. He threatened me, said I'd lose you if I kept fighting. My chest tightened painfully. She made herself small to survive. She stayed quiet because she thought it would keep me safe. The recording paused, then continued in a whisper. But I always believed in you. You see things others miss. I just hoped one day you'd believe in yourself, too. That was when the tears came. Quiet, unstoppable. Hestia didn't say anything. She just stayed there beside me. My mother hadn't been weak. She had been silenced, and I had misunderstood her for years. I leaned into Hestia, letting myself feel the weight of it. They never deserved her, I said softly. No, they didn't, she replied, but she made sure they'd never erase her. An hour later, I left. The sun was rising, the city waking up around me. I felt different, not lighter, but steadier. When I reached my car, I noticed something under the windshield, a black envelope. Inside, a single message. You're walking into something you don't understand. Turn back. I looked around the empty street, then let out a quiet laugh. They keep warning me, I said under my breath, but the only thing I don't understand is why they thought I would stay quiet. 2 days passed. I barely left the apartment. I gathered supplies, tools, extra phones, anything I might need. I kept the blinds closed, worked through the night, slept during the day. I wasn't afraid. I was preparing. The symbols on the pages weren't random. They were coordinates, layered into angles and patterns. Once aligned, they pointed to a location outside the city, somewhere hidden, somewhere my father wouldn't want anyone to find. I drove out alone, headlights cutting through the dark road ahead. My GPS flickered, failing briefly before recovering. It didn't matter. I already knew I was close. The warehouse stood abandoned, broken windows, faded warning signs, but the lock on the side gate was new, clean, recently placed. I parked a distance away and approached on foot. The air around the building felt stale, still, like everything inside was holding its breath. I found the side entrance, rested but barely latched. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Sensors clicked on. Low amber lights flickered along the walls. A hum rolled beneath the floor, faint and steady. Electric systems still running. This place wasn't dead. Someone had been keeping it alive. I walked past metal beams, empty crates, a conveyor belt frozen in mid-motion. Then a voice came from the shadows. You came just as I hoped. I froze. The voice wasn't Callan's. A figure stepped forward and my world tilted. It was him, Thorne Vexley, alive. I stumbled back a step, grabbing the nearest support beam. He looked exactly as I remembered. Same broad shoulders, same calculating eyes, but thinner, paler, like someone who'd traded sunlight for control. "Dad," I whispered. He smiled. "Not quite the ghost you expected, huh?" My legs felt like lead. "You're supposed to be dead." "Death is relative," he said calmly. "Sometimes disappearing is more efficient than dying." Before I could respond, another figure stepped out behind him. Of course, Callan. He looked too pleased with himself. "Told you'd figure it out." "You," I looked between them. "You faked it. You both. This whole thing, what was it? A test? A game? Insurance?" Thorne replied, "Your mother had started leaking information. Little things at first, patents, names. Then she built that bed. My heart punched against my ribs. She didn't build it to store secrets. She built it to protect them from you. Thorne tilted his head. She built it for you. That was her mistake. I stepped back, hand reaching instinctively toward my pocket, my phone, a recorder, anything. She trusted me, I said, shaking, because she knew you'd come after me next. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small remote, pressed play. A recording played through hidden speakers. Her voice again. Alra Vexley, March 14th. Thorne threatened to have Verrill removed from the home, said if I didn't stop pursuing the trust, he'd file for custody, claim mental instability, fabricate medical reports, said she'll be mine before you can blink. My knees buckled. That's enough, I snapped. Thorne turned off the recording. You were never the target, Verrill. You were leverage. You were the perfect pawn. A silence hung in the air like smoke. Then I spoke lower than before. You threatened to erase me. No, Thorne said coolly. I threatened to use you. Big difference. I clenched my jaw, stepping forward. You don't get to define that. You don't get to rewrite history, sweetheart, Kaylin added. Mom lost. You were just too naive to see it. You know what? I said, my voice rising like a tide, slow but certain. I might have been naive, but I see clearly now. Thorne took a step closer, voice low, almost sympathetic. You're in over your head, Verrill. If you walk away now, I'll forgive the trespass. Stay, and you'll regret it. I looked into his face, the man who taught me fear and called it structure, the man who claimed silence was safety, the man who tried to bury my mother in life and in death. No, I said, meeting his stare. You don't get to erase women anymore. I walked out of that warehouse with my pulse hammering in my throat and my fists clenched so tight my nails left half-moon dents in my palms. You don't get to erase women anymore. I didn't say it for them. I said it for her, for my mother, for the woman they spent years calling unstable, irrelevant, fragile. But she wasn't fragile. She was filtered out, censored, sanitized from their version of the truth. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the floor with the documents from the hidden compartment, pages spread across my living room like shattered glass. Blueprints, test notes, sketches, patent filings never submitted. It was all here. And nestled among them, folded inside an old manila envelope, was a laminated press clipping. Vexley Industries named Innovator of the Decade. The article praised the invention that had revolutionized small-scale energy transfer in urban housing infrastructure. The photo showed Kaylin grinning like he'd built the thing with his bare hands. But the diagram they used, the one displayed behind him during the award ceremony, was my mother's, word for word, stroke for stroke. Even her signature loop in the lower right corner was faintly visible beneath the company logo they'd slapped over it. I stared at that page, my vision blurring. My breath grew shallow. They didn't just take her voice. They took her genius, sold it, celebrated it, turned her into nothing while they bathed in applause. I whispered. They stole her brilliance and put their names on it. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a click, a decision. The next morning, I messaged a woman I used to follow during my undergrad days. Her name was Dana Fields, an investigative reporter who didn't pull punches and had a knack for blowing open corporate scandals. She agreed to meet in a downtown cafe 2 hours later. She arrived in a gray coat, messenger bag slung over one shoulder, laptop already open before she sat down. "All right, Verrill," she said. "You said this wasn't just personal. Prove it." I handed her the folder, no hesitation. She flipped through the documents slowly at first, then faster. Her brows drew closer together. "This blueprint," she muttered, tapping a corner. "Where did you get this?" It was hidden in an antique bed my parents left me, one that used to be in my mother's studio. "Are you aware this exact design was featured in the Vexley Industries patent suite 5 years ago?" "I am now." She looked up at me. If these dates are accurate and these sketches predate their submission, this isn't a dispute. This is theft, fraud, maybe even racketeering. I don't need a court to tell me what I already know, I said quietly, but I need the world to hear it. Dana leaned back, nodding slowly. You realize what you're doing, right? This isn't just family dirt. This is going to hit a national level. Good, I said. Let it burn. That night, the article went live. Buried Genius. Was Vexley's legacy built on a stolen foundation? It started as a ripple on niche media. Within 2 hours, it was trending. Major outlets picked it up. My inbox exploded. Some of it support, much of it venom. You should have stayed in your lane. You're ruining your family. Ungrateful little parasite. And from Kalen, of course. You've made a big mistake. He didn't even try to mask it as concern, just power trying to hold the last threat of control. I stared at his message for a long time, then deleted it. Instead, I picked up my phone, switched the camera to front-facing, and hit record. My name is Veril Vexley. I'm an art restoration specialist. I'm also the daughter of a Vexley, a woman who created something brilliant and died with the world believing she was nothing. I paused. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed firm. You told me to stay silent. I stayed silent too long. Now I speak for her. I posted the video and powered off my phone. No hashtags, no tags, no theatrics. Just truth. Plain, brutal, overdue. By morning, my inbox had imploded. Not even an hour passed before the retaliation started. Messages flooded in from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were silent, others hissed veiled threats through encrypted apps. One read simply, "Nice move. Hope your fire alarms work." Then the building manager knocked on my door. "Miss Vexley, fire inspection, unscheduled." He looked nervous, too nervous for a man who had worked here 10 years. I didn't open the door. "Send them back with a warrant." He hesitated, then mumbled something and left. I watched him through the peephole, phone clenched in my hand. They were poking, pushing, seeing if I'd flinch. I gave them a chance to back off. They didn't take it. So I opened the last envelope my mother had sealed with red wax, and a note, "Only if they come for you." Inside was a USB drive and a single sheet of paper. On it, 3 words. Clarity Protocol Initiate. I plugged it into my laptop and instantly a password screen appeared, blank except for a blinking cursor. I didn't hesitate. The answer had been etched in that bed frame since the beginning. I typed in the first sequence of overlapping triangles from the blueprint. The screen flickered. Then her voice filled the room again. "If you are seeing this, they came for you, too." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her voice wash over me. "This system is a fail-safe," she said. "Every file, every recording, every blueprint archived here, encrypted, ready to go where they can't bury it. You'll have one chance to activate it." A list of recipient nodes began to scroll down the screen. SEC, DOJ, EPO, YPO, CNN, The Guardian, Reuters, ProPublica. Hundreds of files populated the progress bar. Audio logs, internal emails, false statements, whistleblower testimonies, with dates that made my stomach turn. Kalen's voice on tape. "She's already dead weight. Let's make sure she stays buried." My hand hovered over the final command. There was no going back, but there was also no other way forward. I clicked upload. The screen turned black for a heartbeat, then filled with pulsing white light. Clarity Protocol activated. Secure transmission in progress. My eyes burned, not from tears, but from the clarity my mother had always believed I'd one day find. She had built this, hidden it beneath decades of silence, left it for the one person they never saw coming, me. I watched the bar fill, 12%, 39%, 72%. Then, Clarity Protocol completed. Data integrity confirmed. All nodes received. The room fell still. My phone buzzed again. Kaylin, you've destroyed everything. I stared at his message. Then I typed back. Not everything. Only the lie. I sat back, breath catching for a second. The sun had broken through the clouds outside, casting long stripes across the hardwood. My apartment had never looked brighter or more like a war room. I didn't feel like a daughter anymore. I felt like the person my mother always believed I could be. Not just a witness, not just a voice, a reckoning. I walked into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked into the mirror. For the first time, I didn't see my father's disappointment or my brother's smugness. I saw me, unshaken. I leaned closer to the reflection, voice barely a whisper. Now we see who they really are when the masks come off. The next 2 days moved like a landslide. No control, no warning, only impact. Every news outlet ran a variation of the same headline. Vexley Empire implodes amid intellectual property scandal. Clarity Protocol leak sparks DOJ SEC investigation. Buried genius. Who was Elijah Vexley? I sat on my couch, knees hugged to my chest, watching it all unfold with the quiet intensity of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Stock prices dropped like a stone. Investors bailed. The board of directors called an emergency vote, then another, then stopped answering their phones altogether. By noon on the second day, the company's legal counsel issued a public statement. They welcomed cooperation with the investigation and would reevaluate internal systems and historic filings. Translation, they were scrambling. My phone didn't stop vibrating. Journalists, lawyers, former employees, some I hadn't seen since childhood. One of them texted, "They used her work. You proved it. We're behind you." I didn't want applause. I wanted accountability. And justice was now playing on every screen in America. A federal judge confirmed what I already knew. My mother's patents were never legally transferred. Her inventions had been hijacked, repackaged, and filed under Vexley Industries without her consent. The court not only voided those filings, but reinstated Allie Ree Vexley as the rightful holder of every IP license connected to those innovations, and because I was her sole heir, ownership passed to me. The boardroom inside Vexley HQ looked like the aftermath of a battlefield. Half the chairs were empty. The remaining members sat stiff, pale, watching the SEC reps shuffle through files at the end of the table. I stood at the head seat. I didn't sit. Someone murmured, "She controls the patents now." Another replied, "We're working for her." I kept my voice calm. "You're not working for me. You're deciding whether to work for what's next." That's when the door slammed open. Kaylin. His face was crimson, jaw clenched tight enough to snap. "You think you've won," he spat. "You just blew up our legacy. You destroyed everything Dad built." "No," I said coolly. "You did that yourselves. I just turned on the lights." He turned to the board. "She's unstable. You all know this whole mess. She doesn't have the temperament to run anything." Silence. Then one board member, an older man with tired eyes, looked him square in the face. "Kaylin, you forged documents and buried your own mother's name. You lost the right to call anyone unstable." Even security stepped forward when Kaylin raised his voice again. "I will not be erased," he barked. "Not by her, not by anyone." "You erased her first," I replied, "and now everyone knows it." He stormed out. I didn't watch him leave. Instead, I turned to the table. "I'm not here to clean up your image," I said. "I'm here to make sure this company becomes what it pretended to be." No one challenged me. Later that evening, I stepped into what used to be my mother's private lab, cleaned, restored, humming with low light and new purpose.
It was quiet, but not empty. Her presence lived in every blueprint still tacked to the wall, every prototype lined with careful hands. I walked to the far end of the room where a photograph of her had been boxed away years ago. I placed it on the center of the desk. She was smiling in it, the real kind, proud, peaceful. "They built this empire with stolen dreams," I whispered. "Now it belongs to the woman they erased." It had been a week, 7 quiet days since the board fell silent, Kaylin vanished from the building, and the lawyers stopped circling like vultures, since the press shifted their attention to the next scandal and left my mother's face finally framed in truth. But my chest still ached. I wandered the restored lab slowly, fingertips grazing the edge of her desk, the metal edge of a prototype, the faded ink of her handwritten formulas. I won the battle, but I still lost her. No court ruling could give me back the time we should have had. No headline could undo the nights I spent wondering if she'd ever truly loved me, or if I had just been a reminder of everything she'd lost. That doubt had always haunted me, until Hestia called. She met me outside the old apartment she now shared with her daughter. Her hands were gentler than I remembered, her voice lower, weathered. "She asked me to wait," she said, pressing the envelope into my palm, "until the storm passed, until you were ready." The envelope was cream-colored, heavy, my name written in long, curved strokes I knew by heart. Veril. I didn't open it there. I waited until I got home, locked the door, sat in silence, and let my fingers tremble just once before tearing it open. The letters smelled faintly of lavender. "My darling girl, if you're holding this, then you've done more than I ever could. You didn't just survive them, you saw through them, and you chose something better." I stopped reading, breathing through the pressure building behind my eyes. "I know I failed you in ways you won't always be able to name. I let them silence me because I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was also afraid."
Afraid that if I fought too hard, they'd erase me completely and take you with them. You were never invisible, Veril. You were my reason. That line undid me. I sat there on the floor, clutching the pages to my chest like a life raft, sobbing into the sleeves of the sweatshirt she used to wear on rainy days. It smelled like dust now, but in that moment, it felt like her arms. The rest of the letter wasn't about the company. It wasn't about patents or revenge or strategy. It was about motherhood and the kind of love that survives even the cruelest kinds of silence. By the time I folded it and slid it into a frame, the world felt a little different. Not quieter, not easier, but honest. 2 days later, I received a single email from Callan. "You win. I'm sorry." No signature, no attachments, no blame. I didn't reply. Instead, I submitted paperwork to create the Elira Vexley Foundation, a memorial scholarship for women in invention and design. Full ride, no legacy names required. I gave the antique bed to the museum we launched with it. Visitors walk past it now, not as a symbol of rejection, but as the blueprint of a truth that outlived its burial. In my new office, formerly hers, I kept it simple. White walls, her painting, my tools, and her letter sitting framed beside my monitor, not hidden anymore, not encrypted. That night, after locking up, I turned off the lights, letting the skyline bathe the room in amber. I stared out across Providence and whispered to the dark, "You gave me a broken bed, but it held the blueprint to everything I needed to become." 2 months passed. The building didn't look the same anymore. It didn't feel the same either. Gone were the sharp edges, the sterile walls, the aura of dominance that used to hover like a shadow over Vexley Industries. Now a new sign glinted in the morning sun, Aurora Innovations, in honor of Elira Vexley, whose light could not be silenced. I stood beside it as the plaque was unveiled, wind tugging at the hem of my blazer. Behind me, young inventors prepared their prototypes for the Foundation's first innovation fair. Nervous laughter bubbled up as they adjusted displays, tested code, rewired circuits. You could feel it in the air, energy without fear. I closed my eyes for a moment and imagined her standing beside me, arms crossed, chin tilted, that small, proud smile she used to wear when no one was watching. She would have liked this. Not the sign or the building or the name, the purpose. Later that afternoon, Hestia knocked gently on my office door. "You've got something," she said, holding out a cream-colored envelope. It had no return address, no postage, just my name in handwriting that once filled the margins of my childhood notebooks. Veril. I opened it carefully. The letter inside wasn't long. It was from Callan, not typed, written. That alone surprised me. "I assume you've won, or are close enough it doesn't matter. I've had time to think. Not that it's helped much. You always wanted answers. I don't have any. I just keep wondering. Do you really think she'd be proud of you doing all of this without me?" That question sat with me longer than I expected. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. Hatred took energy, and mine was going somewhere better now. I folded the letter once, twice, then slid it into the drawer beside my mother's final words. He wasn't owed a reply, but he was owed the truth, the same truth he ran from. She wouldn't have been proud of me because I did it alone. She'd have been proud despite it. The real inheritance was never the company. It was never the power. It was seeing what she saw all along. I walked down the hall into the newly opened East Wing, now a gallery of restored blueprints and preserved designs. At the end of the room, in a quiet glass case under soft light, sat the bed, polished, reassembled, its secret panel opened just enough to reveal the blueprint tucked inside. Some visitors saw it and smiled, others whispered, confused. One teenager pointed and said, "That's where it started." They weren't wrong. I stepped closer and read the etched plaque, "The bed that carried a legacy." For a moment, I rested my hand on the glass. A goodbye, a beginning. That night, I sat by my apartment window writing in a new journal, the kind with thick pages and no lines, just space for whatever needed to come out. They left me nothing, but somehow it became everything. The broken bed, the buried blueprints, the truth they tried to hide. Success built on lies will always collapse, but truth will outlive us all. I closed the journal and looked out at the city. No fireworks, no headlines screaming my name anymore, just quiet. And for the first time in years, I welcomed it. Sometimes what you inherit isn't money. It isn't a house, a name, or even the approval you spent a lifetime chasing. Sometimes what you inherit is a mess, a secret, a wound that no one warned you about. But I've learned that even a broken inheritance can become something powerful if you choose to rebuild it with truth. My story started with humiliation, a single splintered bed frame, but in the end, it gave me everything. The truth about who my mother was, the strength I didn't know I had, and the chance to rewrite what legacy really means. So let me ask you something. What are you carrying that might look like a burden but could be hiding something bigger? A story waiting to be heard? A voice that's been silenced? A dream no one believed in yet? I hope my journey reminds you that your worth isn't defined by what others give you, but by what you choose to create from it. If this story reached something in your heart today, leave a comment with a 1 or let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too. And if it didn't land for you, I'd still love to know why. This space is for all of us. And hey, if you're still watching, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video.